In this video, we're going to have a look at converting between units and measurement using equations. When making measurements, we use the International System of Units to ensure that everyone has the same reference. When measuring distance, our base unit is meters, and then it works similar to our decimal system. Every different prefix we add is either 10 times bigger or 10 times smaller than the previous. As you move to the right, you multiply by 10 every time. And as you move to the left, you divide by 10. The measurements that we use most often are kilometers, meters, centimeter, and millimeter. So when converting from kilometer to meter, we can simply multiply by 1,000, because in reality we are moving 3 spaces to the right. Similarly, from meters to centimeters, we will multiply by 100, and then from centimeters to millimeters, we multiply by 10. When moving to the left, all of these simply change to division. So now we divide by 10, or 100, or 1,000. Example 1. The diagonals of a kite are 12 centimeters and 130 millimeters respectively. Calculate the area of the kite. The formula for the area of a kite is a half multiplied with the product of the diagonals. Here you need to realize that the two lengths are given in different units, so you first need to convert one of them. I'm going to choose to use centimeters. So the 12 centimeters can be used just like that, but the 130 is in millimeters, and to convert to centimeters I need to divide by 10, which will give me 13. Now I can multiply by that 13 centimeters, so the area of the kite is 78 centimeters squared. If I chose to do my calculations in millimeters, the 130 would have stayed exactly like that. But this time the 12 centimeters will have to be multiplied by 10, and then that means I have 120 millimeters. Multiplying all of this will give me an area of 7,800 millimeters squared. Here you can see that the difference between centimeters squared and millimeters squared is not 10, but you have to multiply by 100. So when converting between unit squares, you will still multiply and divide, but by double the amount of zeros. So kilometers squared to meters squared, we will multiply by 6 zeros, or 1,000,000. From meters squared to centimeters squared, we're now going to multiply by 4 zeros instead of 2, and that is 10,000. And as we've just seen, from centimeters squared to millimeters squared, we multiply by 100. Example 2. The area of a parallelogram is 75 centimeters squared. The height is 500 millimeters. Calculate the length of the base in meters. Here the information is making use of 3 different units, but when doing calculations it is important to make sure that all your units are the same. Looking at the information, we have 75 centimeters squared and we have 500 millimeters. I'm going to start off by changing the centimeters squared to millimeters squared. To do that, I'm going to take the 75 centimeters squared and multiply it by 100. So now I know the area is 7,500 millimeters squared. The formula for the area of a parallelogram is base times perpendicular height. We know that the area is 7,500 millimeters squared, and we need to determine the base. This base is multiplied by the height, which we know is 500 millimeters. Now we need to solve the equation to get the value of b. And to do that, we are going to divide both sides by the 500, which is multiplied to b at the moment. This means that b is 15. And because we used both measurements in millimeters, b will be 15 millimeters. But the question was to give the base in meters. So now we need to move from millimeters to meters, which will be divided by 10 and divided by 100. So to get b in meters, I'm going to take the 15 and divide by 1,000. My final answer, 0,015 meters. Example 3. The area of a kite is 140 meters squared. The length of one diagonal is 14 meters. Calculate the length of the other diagonal in centimeters. This time, all the information is given in terms of meters, so we can immediately substitute into the formula. We know that the area of this kite is 140 meters squared, and the one diagonal's length is given as 14. I'm going to call the other diagonal d. Now we can solve the equation to get the value of d. And for this you need to realize that times by a half is the same as dividing by 2. So to get rid of the divided by 2, I'm going to multiply with 2 on both sides. This will then ensure that on the right we have a half times 2, which is 1, and then we'll be left with only 14 times d. Next we need to get rid of the 14 to get d alone, and for that we're going to divide both sides by 14. In the end, d, the diagonal's length, is then 20 meters. This is because all the information was in meters. The question, however, was to determine the length in centimeters, and for that we still need to multiply by 100, and that will give us 2,000 centimeters.